He caught Sally completely by surprise, because as he came down, he shut off the ignition before she could lock it in place. For the first time in 5 years, Sally's motor was dead. I think I yelled, but Gellhorn had the switch on manual and locked that in place too. He kicked the motor into action. Sally was alive again, but she had no freedom of action. He started up the road. The sedans were still there. They turned and drifted away, not very quickly. I suppose it was all a puzzle to them. One was Giuseppe, from the Milan factories, and the other was Stephen. They were always together. They were both new at the farm, but they'd been here long enough to know that our cars just didn't have drivers. Gellhorn went straight on, and when the sedans finally got it through their heads that Sally wasn't going to slow down, that she couldn't slow down, it was too late for anything but desperate measures. They broke for it, one to each side, and Sally raced between them like a streak. Steve crashed through the lakeside fence and rolled to a halt on the grass and mud, not 6 inches from the water's edge. Giuseppe bumped along the land side of the road to a shaken halt. I had Steve back on the highway and was trying to find out what harm, if any, the fence had done him when Gellhorn came back. Gellhorn opened Sally's door and stepped out. Leaning back, he shut off the ignition a second time. "There," he said. "I think I did her a lot of good." I held my temper. "Why did you dash through the sedans? There was no reason for that." "I kept expecting them to turn out." "They did. One went through a fence." "I'm sorry, Jake," he said. "I thought they'd move more quickly. You know how it is. I've been in lots of buses, but I've only been in a private automatic 2 or 3 times in my life, and this is the first time I ever drove one. That just shows you, Jake. It got me, driving one, and I'm pretty hard-boiled. I tell you, we don't have to go more than 20% below list price to reach a good market, and it would be 90% profit." "Which we would split?" 50-50, and I take all the risks, remember?" "All right. I listen to you. Now you listen to me." I raised my voice because I was just too mad to be polite anymore. "When you turned off Sally's motor, you hurt her. How would you like to be kicked unconscious? That's what you do to Sally when you turn her off." "You're exaggerating, Jake. The automata buses get turned off every night." "Sure. That's why I want none of my boys or girls in your fancy 57 bodies where I won't know what treatment they'll get. Buses need major repairs in their positronic circuits every couple of years. Old Matthew hasn't had his circuits touched in 20 years. What can you offer him compared with that?" "Well, you're excited now. Suppose you think over my proposition when you've cooled down and get in touch with me." "I've thought it over all I want to. If I ever see you again, I'll call the police." His mouth got hard and ugly. He said, "Just a minute, old-timer." I said, "Just a minute, you. This is private property, and I'm ordering you off." He shrugged. "Well then, goodbye." I said, "Mrs. Hester will see you off the property. Make that goodbye permanent." But it wasn't permanent. I saw him again 2 days later. 2.5 days, rather, because it was about noon when I saw him first, and a little after midnight when I saw him again. I sat up in bed when he turned the light on, blinking blindly till I made out what was happening. Once I could see, it didn't take much explaining. In fact, it took none at all. He had a gun in his right fist, the nasty little needle barrel just visible between 2 fingers. I knew that all he had to do was to increase the pressure of his hand, and I would be torn apart. He said, Put on your clothes, Jake. I didn't move. I just watched him. He said, "Look, Jake, I know the situation. I visited you 2 days ago, remember? You have no guards on this place, no electrified fences, no warning signals, nothing." I said, "I don't need any." "Meanwhile, there's nothing to stop you from leaving, Mr. Gellhorn. I would if I were you. This place can be very dangerous." He laughed a little. "It is, for anyone on the wrong side of a fist gun." "I see it," I said. "I know you've got one." "Then get a move on. My men are waiting." "No, sir, Mr. Gellhorn. Not unless you tell me what you want, and probably not then." "I made you a proposition day before yesterday." "The answer's still no." "There's more to the proposition now. I've come here with some men and an automata bus. You have your chance to come with me and disconnect 25 of the positronic motors. I don't care which 25 you choose. We'll load them on the bus and take them away. Once they're disposed of, I'll see to it that you get your fair share of the money." "I have your word on that, I suppose?" He didn't act as if he thought I was being sarcastic. He said, "You have." I said, "No." "If you insist on saying no, we'll go about it in our own way. I'll disconnect the motors myself. Only I'll disconnect all 51, every one of them." "It isn't easy to disconnect positronic motors, Mr. Gellhorn. Are you a robotics expert? Even if you are, you know, these motors have been modified by me." "I know that, Jake. And to be truthful, I'm not an expert. I may ruin quite a few motors trying to get them out. That's why I'll have to work over all 51 if you don't cooperate. You see, I may only end up with 25 when I'm through. The first few I'll tackle will probably suffer the most, till I get the hang of it, you see. And if I go it myself, I think I'll put Sally first in line." I said, "I can't believe you're serious, Mr. Gellhorn." He said, "I'm serious, Jake." He let it all dribble in. "If you want to help, you can keep Sally. Otherwise, she's liable to be hurt very badly. Sorry." I said, "I'll come with you, but I'll give you one more warning. You'll be in trouble, Mr. Gellhorn." He thought that was very funny. He was laughing very quietly as we went down the stairs together. There was an automata bus waiting outside the driveway to the garage apartments. The shadows of 3 men waited beside it, and their flash beams went on as we approached. Gellhorn said in a low voice, "I've got the old fellow. Come on, move the truck up the drive and let's get started." One of the others leaned in and punched the proper instructions on the control panel. We moved up the driveway, with the bus following submissively. "It won't go inside the garage," I said. "The door won't take it. We don't have buses here, only private cars." "All right," said Gellhorn. "Pull it over onto the grass and keep it out of sight." I could hear the thrumming of the cars when we were still 10 yards from the garage. Usually they quieted down if I entered the garage. This time they didn't. I think they knew that strangers were about, and once the faces of Gellhorn and the others were visible, they got noisier. Each motor was a warm rumble, and each motor was knocking irregularly until the place rattled. The lights went up automatically as we stepped inside. Gellhorn didn't seem bothered by the car noise, but the 3 men with him looked surprised and uncomfortable. They had the look of the hired thug about them, a look that was not compounded of physical features, so much as of a certain wariness of eye and hang-doggedness of face. I knew the type, and I wasn't worried. One of them said, "Damn it, they're burning gas." "My cars always do," I replied stiffly. "Not tonight," said Gellhorn. "Turn them off." "It's not that easy, Mr. Gellhorn," I said. "Get started," he said.